My ex-wife's new spouse kept running over my lawn and destroying my lilies. I had a talk with her. The first time Greg ran over my lilies, I stood in the kitchen holding a coffee cup that had gone cold without me noticing. I was watching the early morning through the greasy slit of the blinds, same as I always did around 6:45. It wasn't about him, not at first. I wasn't even paying attention to the truck. It was just the rhythm of things. Sit at the table, drink the coffee, stare at the street like maybe it'll open up and explain something I never understood. I didn't even see it happen that time. Just noticed the flattened green when I stepped outside to grab the paper. Two stems bent clean in half, their bright orange petals bruised into silence like someone had slapped the life out of them. I crouched there on the edge of the lawn in my slippers, poking at the mangled plants like maybe I could still save them. But they were gone. The thing about lilies is, once you break the stem, that's it. No coming back. I told myself it was an accident, told myself a lot of things that week, that maybe his rear view didn't catch the curb, or maybe he hadn't seen how close the bed of the truck came to the edge of my lawn, that the tires hadn't meant anything. But that's the thing about being lied to by someone you loved for almost 15 years, you get good at lying to yourself too. I didn't call Sarah. I don't call her for things like that. I hadn't called her in months. Not since the night she told me she was getting married again. I didn't even say much then, just nodded, said I was happy for her, let the silence do all the bleeding for me. That's always been my way. Quiet dignity, she called it once, more like emotional cowardice. But I've learned it's easier to keep a person's memory clean when you don't keep touching it. The second time I watched it happen. Same truck, same too-wide turn out of the driveway across the street. This time I saw the tires hug the curve like they'd been told to. Big black things with silver rims that flashed in the morning sun like teeth. And then, crunch, I felt it in my jaw, a low, living crack that I swear echoed up through the ground and into the soles of my feet. He didn't look over, that's what got me. He didn't even pretend to check if he'd hit something. Just kept driving like the edge of my life wasn't worth glancing at. I didn't move, just stood there in the window with my hands still wet from washing dishes, watching the petals scatter like confetti in a funeral. When I planted those lilies, it was 2 summers ago, not long after the papers came through. I had Emily that week and she helped. She was 15 then, still soft around the edges in a way that made me ache. We spent a Saturday digging the trench together, dirt under our fingernails, sweat sticking our shirts to our backs. She told me about some boy she liked at school. His name was Mason or Maddox or something equally doomed, and I told her how tiger lilies are tough flowers, resilient. How they keep coming back even when winter tries to bury them. She looked up at me with this skeptical little squint and said, "You're weirdly obsessed with flowers, Dad." And I remember laughing, really laughing, for the first time in what felt like 100 years. I hadn't seen her in 3 weeks. Sarah said it was because of band practice. I said nothing because what was there to say? You can't guilt a teenager into love. You can't fix years of slow erosion with a single afternoon in the dirt. After the 3rd time Greg ran them over, I stopped pretending it was unintentional. He'd widened the turn now. It was deliberate. There was a new curve of tire tracks that bit deeper into the edge of my lawn, arcing like a knife. He didn't even try to avoid them. I stood on the porch that morning, coffee hot this time, and watched him reverse over the same spot twice, once coming out, once backing in. And still no eye contact. Just that truck, that damn truck with its chrome and oversized masculinity, chewing through the softest thing I had left. I wanted to scream or throw the mug, or walk across the street and pound on their door like some bitter old man with nothing left to lose. But I didn't. I just stood there, hand trembling slightly around the handle, and thought, so this is how it goes. This is how a person gets erased. I've been trying to keep it together. That's the honest truth. People always talk about divorce like it's this clean break, like a bone you can set and forget. But it's not like that. It's like slow water damage. You don't see the rot until it's already inside the walls. You go to make toast one morning and realize you haven't spoken to anyone in 4 days. You reach for the second fork out of habit. You smell her shampoo on the pillow even though it's been gone for years. And now he's here, in my street. In my view, leaving bruises across the last goddamn thing I had a say in. The 4th time, I didn't even wait to see it happen. I heard the truck door slam from the kitchen and something in me clicked, like a trigger you didn't know was loaded. I was already walking by the time he started the engine, out the door, across the lawn, onto the street barefoot. The gravel was cold, sharp in places. I didn't care. The truck was idling at the stop sign like it was waiting for a cue. I walked right up to the driver's side, but I didn't look at him. I looked past him, toward the porch, toward her. Sarah stepped out slowly, like she already knew. Her arms were crossed, hair still damp from the shower. No makeup, just her, the version of her I knew best. The one from Sunday mornings and hospital waiting rooms and long car rides where the only music was breathing. "I want to talk," I said, and my voice sounded strange to me, hoarse, raw, like it had come from somewhere deeper than my throat. She looked at me like I was a wound, not bleeding, just open, unhealed. "Not now, Sam," she said quietly. But it wasn't quiet enough, because he heard. Greg leaned across the passenger seat, smirking like he'd already won something I never got the rules to. And that was it. That was the moment something broke. Not a scream, not an explosion, just a stillness, sudden and complete, like a room where the air gets sucked out and everything else has to rearrange itself to survive. I turned and walked back across the street without another word. The lilies were gone. But I was. Not yet. The morning after, I stayed in bed far longer than made sense. Not because I was tired, but because everything felt wrong in my body. Like someone had gone in overnight and rearranged my bones. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan creaking in its uneven orbit, listening to the occasional groan of the house shifting in the heat. There was a headache blooming somewhere behind my eyes. Not sharp, not splitting, just dull, persistent, the kind of pain that comes from too much feeling held in too long. I didn't check the lilies, I already knew. Eventually, I got up and made coffee I didn't want and stood at the window like I always did. My robe was slipping off one shoulder, but I didn't fix it. Across the street, their house looked like any other house. Beige siding, white trim, shutters that tried too hard. There was a flag hanging out front now, some kind of veteran decal, and I realized with a strange, quiet kind of guilt that I didn't know what Greg did for work. I didn't know much of anything about him, actually, except the way his tires liked to eat things that were still growing. I think I wanted Sarah to come to me, even just a text, some acknowledgement that what happened on the street the day before meant something, but nothing came, not that day, not the next. So I stopped opening the blinds. Instead, I started walking. It began as a way to fill the empty hours between dinner and bed. The TV felt too loud. The books I used to love just blurred into meaningless black shapes on the page. So I walked, past the strip of failed shops near the highway, past the tiny church with the "God loves broken things" sign out front, past the school where Emily used to run up the steps in her too big backpack, always looking over her shoulder to make sure I was still watching. I kept walking until my legs ached and my breath felt clean again. There's something about moving your body through space that tricks the grief into thinking it's going somewhere. Like if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, eventually you'll walk out of it. But grief is clever. It finds its way into your shoes, your socks, the arch of your foot. You carry it with you no matter how far you go. It was maybe the 5th or 6th night that I found the community garden behind the library. It was mostly empty, the way everything is in early spring before things have decided if they'll live or not. But one man was there, bent over a patch of stubborn tomatoes, his gloved hands deep in the soil. I paused at the fence, not because I wanted to talk, but because the smell of earth caught me off guard. Rich, honest, like something I used to believe in. He looked up, wiped his forehead with the back of his wrist. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't know what to say to that. The question felt too big, so I told the truth, no. And instead of trying to fix it, he nodded, like that was enough. His name was Theo, older than me by a few years maybe, hard to tell. His face had the kind of lines that could be from laughter or loss. He didn't say much, just pointed to a wheelbarrow and said, "You can help me haul compost if you want." And so I did. That first night I barely spoke. I just listened to the sound of the shovel slicing through the pile, to the distant hum of a streetlight buzzing into life, to the soil whispering its secrets under our nails. It felt good to do something with my hands, something that wasn't just pressing buttons or holding a steering wheel or scratching at invisible itches I couldn't name. I came back the next night and the next. Theo didn't ask why I kept showing up and I didn't offer. We talked about simple things, how to keep Basil from bolting, how the city wastes too much water, which birds were nesting in the corner tree this year. It felt like a space outside the rest of my life, like I could be someone different there, or maybe just someone smaller, simpler, more manageable. Back home, everything stayed quiet. I stopped checking my phone, stopped shaving. The porch started to sag in one corner where the wood was splitting, and I made a note in my head to fix it, but didn't. I let the lawn go wild. The weeds came first, little green rebellions poking through the yellow. Then the grass itself gave up, turned dry, scratchy, brittle. I liked it better that way. Honest, a little broken. One afternoon, I got a letter from Emily. Not an email, not a text. An actual letter, handwritten in blue ink on lined notebook paper. Hey Dad, band is intense. I miss you sometimes. Don't be weird. Love, M. I stared at it for a long time, folded it, unfolded it, tried to read between the lines, but all I found was her handwriting, round and rushed, like she didn't want to think too hard about any of it. Still, I carried that letter in my pocket for 3 days, didn't reply, didn't know how. One night, Theo asked if I wanted to take home some of the leftover seedlings. Not lilies, he said with a crooked smile. Too dramatic, but lavender maybe, hardy, quiet, doesn't need much. Like me, I said. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed, not loudly, not joyfully, but enough. I still hadn't talked to Sarah again. I still hadn't looked Greg in the eye. But something had shifted, not big, not grand, just a little space in my chest, a little breath that didn't hurt to take. That was enough for now. Because sometimes survival doesn't look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like lavender in a cracked pot. And a pair of hands dirty with soil still moving. It wasn't a grand plan. There wasn't some movie moment where I stood in front of the mirror rehearsing what I'd say, steeling myself with deep breaths and background music swelling behind me. It was just a Tuesday, and the light was doing that thing where it slices sideways through the kitchen and makes the dust in the air look holy. I was sweeping of all things. My hands were busy and my brain had gone quiet in that soft, humming way it does when you finally stop trying to control it. I hadn't thought about the lilies in days, not in a pointed way, but the memory still lived in me like bruises live under the skin, faint but certain. I found myself standing at her door before I had a chance to talk myself out of it. There's something strange about walking up to the door of a house that used to be part of your future. It's like walking into a photograph and realizing you're the only one still in black and white. I remembered the way the porch creaked near the third board, and sure enough, it still did. I remembered the way the brass knocker used to clang too loud when Emily banged on it coming home from school. But I didn't knock, I rang the bells. Sarah answered in sweatpants and a ponytail, a basket of laundry under her arm. She blinked like she'd forgotten I existed. Hey, I said, voice dry in my throat. She looked at me the way people look at something they almost recognize. Sam. Yeah, I'm not here to start something. She sighed, not annoyed, not angry, just tired. That sigh told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't the only one still carrying weight. She stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like detergent and lemon cleaner. I hated that I noticed. Hated that part of me was cataloging all the changes. A new rug under the kitchen table, the art we picked out in Asheville gone from the hallway, the wall where Emily used to mark her height now painted over in clean, decisive white. But her mug was still next to the sink. The green one with the little chip near the handle, and somehow that made it worse. We sat at the island. Same granite we chose during that spring when we still touched each other in the dark without thinking. I waited for her to say something first, and when she didn't, I filled the silence like I always used to. I'm sorry, I said, staring down at the way my hands curled around the glass she'd given me like I was trying to hold onto something real. Not for being angry, but for disappearing after everything, for not asking what you needed, for thinking I could just let it all fade quietly. She didn't say anything right away, just looked at me with that expression she used to get when Emily did something half defiant and half adorable, eyebrows drawn, mouth a little soft with regret. "Greg's an ass," she said finally. I looked up. "He does that shit because of you, because he knows it gets under your skin." There was something almost gentle in the way she said it, like she was letting me off the hook without making it feel like a gift. "I thought so," I said. "I thought maybe I was crazy." "You're not crazy," she said, just still stuck. I swallowed around the lump rising in my throat. "I don't hate you," I said, and the words tasted strange. "I've tried. God, Sarah, I've tried. It would be easier, but all I keep feeling is this ache, like I lost something and never buried it, like it's still here somewhere rotting." Her eyes flicked away, down to her hands, her wedding ring, not the one I gave her. This one was smoother, thinner, shinier. I hated it for being newer. "I don't hate you either," she said, "but I don't think I knew how to love you anymore. Not the version of you who shut down every time things got hard, who made silence into a moat around everything that mattered." I wanted to argue, I wanted to defend myself, to say I was trying, that I didn't know how else to survive, but I didn't, because she wasn't wrong. I had built walls, then called them homes. "I kept the lilies alive," I said suddenly, stupidly, as if that could mean anything. She looked at me then, really looked, and in her face I saw something shatter, quiet, inward. "You always loved them," she said. "I didn't know what to do with that kind of tenderness in you. I think I wanted you to be stronger, or harder, something." "They were never just flowers," I said, and I could feel the truth pulsing in me like blood. "They were, I don't know, a way to say I was still here, still trying." Her eyes shimmered for a second, but she blinked it away. "I know," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to answer you." There was a long silence, not heavy, not bitter, just open, like a door we hadn't known was locked until it creaked on its hinges. "I miss her," I said. "I know she's getting older. I know she has a life now. But I feel like I'm watching it all from the parking lot, like the window closed and I don't know how to knock anymore." Sarah stood slowly and walked to the counter. She picked up her phone, typed something in, then set it down beside me. "She wrote you a letter a while back. She keeps asking if you got it." "I did," I said. "I just didn't know how to answer her without sounding like I need more from her than she can give." Sarah shook her head. "She doesn't need you to say the perfect thing. She just needs you to show up." I nodded, and something inside me cracked open, like a shell too long clutched. When I stood to leave, I expected awkwardness, a stiff nod maybe, a silent ushering out, but instead Sarah walked with me to the door. "I'm sorry too," she said before I stepped off the porch. "For painting over the marks on the wall. I thought it would help, it didn't." I looked at her and saw not the woman who left, not the woman who fell in love with someone else, but just her, tired, kind, wounded in her own way. "I'm going to replant something," I said, "not lilies, something quieter." She smiled a little. "That sounds like you." And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt like maybe it did. I tore out the lilies in early October, just after the first frost dusted the grass with its pale hush. The stems were already brittle by then, curled inward like they'd grown tired of trying. I didn't cry when I dug them out. I thought I might, but no tears came, just dirt under my fingernails and a strange, aching silence in my chest. The kind of silence that feels like the tail end of grief, when the sharp edges go dull and what's left is just space. I stood over the bare patch of earth for a long time. The soil looked darker than I remembered, wet with last night's rain. It smelled like the underside of something honest, like rot and roots and the promise of something that might come next. I didn't know what to plant at first. I thought about daisies. I thought about marigolds. I thought absurdly about trying to grow tomatoes just to spite the sidewalk. But in the end, I went with lavender. Theo said it was hardy, said it could handle the edge of the street, the salt, the heat, the careless foot traffic, said it was stubborn in a way that felt familiar. I liked that. I liked that it didn't need much, but still gave something soft back. It's a strange thing, tending to something again. After so long of letting everything fall apart, your hands forget what care feels like. The first time I pressed the seedlings into the ground, I did it too gently, like they might break. Theo laughed and showed me how to firm the soil around the base. You have to give them something to hold on to, he said. I didn't ask if he meant the plants or me, didn't matter. Some afternoons I'd stay after the garden work was done, sitting on the edge of the planter beds, watching the light move across the mulch. I started bringing a thermos of coffee again, hot this time. It tasted better when I'd earned it. Emily came by one Sunday, just showed up without warning. Her hair dyed a streaky purple that looked like she'd done it in the school bathroom. I didn't say a word about it, just handed her a mug and nodded toward the lavender. You redid the yard, she said, crouching beside the curb. The lilies are gone. Yeah, I said, they served their purpose. She ran a finger through the new soil. This smells better. I smiled at that. God, I missed her voice. We didn't talk about the letter. We didn't talk about Greg. We didn't talk about the 3 years of missed birthdays and awkward phone calls and the 1,000 moments we'd both been too proud or too scared to name. But we planted something together that day, a little patch of rosemary behind the porch steps. She called it a witchy herb and made a joke about summoning strength. And you know what? Maybe that's exactly what we did. Sarah texted me once after that, just a simple, she came home smiling, thanks. I didn't answer, I didn't need to. Some things don't require punctuation. The porch is still falling apart. I bought new wood planks but haven't installed them yet. There's something about knowing I could that feels more powerful than pretending I will. The house is still messy. My gutters still overflow when it rains, but the lavender is blooming. A little wild, a little uneven, but real. Bees come in the morning, sometimes butterflies. I wave to Theo when I pass the library. He's always wearing the same worn hat, dirt streaked up his forearms like war paint. He never asks how I'm doing anymore. He just gives me seedlings and a slow nod. I think that's the kind of friendship I needed all along. And Greg, he still pulls out too fast, still swings wide sometimes, but he hasn't touched the lavender, not once. Maybe he got bored, maybe Sarah said something, or maybe he saw me out there one morning on my knees in the dirt, sleeves rolled up, sweat on my temples, and realized I wasn't the man he thought I was, not broken, not beaten, just rebuilding. A little crooked, a little older, but standing. Every once in a while when I brush past the rosemary, the scent clings to me for hours. It smells like something ancient, something alive, like memory and healing all tangled up together. I think I like who I'm becoming. Not healed, not whole, but growing. And that I've learned is enough.